Chav Vav and Aleph on the about the 2 lines in the bottom. Actually, the last line, Tana Rabbanan. The first word on the last line is the words Rabbanan. Chav Vav and Aleph, 26a. Literally the last line, Tana Rabbanan. So we did a whole bunch of things about events or items that one should do Kriya for. Nasi, BAYT, Shmuel Road, Berchas Hashem, Sefer Torah Nisraf, and the last one we talked about was about Beis Hamikdash. Okay, so now we're actually talking about can you sew up the Kriya and how long the actual how
soon can you do it?
No, when you can sew it up. More importantly, how long it has to be. What if there are multiple Kriyas? A person who is sitting Shiva and receives an additional set of...
Say how long, you mean in time or physically?
I meant actually physically in inches, in Tfachim. Okay, that's what I meant. So, says the Gemara like this, Tana Rabbanan, all of the people, not all of the incidents we mentioned above, which are not personal people, right, about Nasi, BAYT, and Shmuel Road, Berchas Hashem, Yerushalayim, Beis Mikdash, Kulam Hashem l'shalom, u'lemolam, u'loktam, v'lasotam k'min sulamos. You can do all kinds of rough kinds of stitches once you've done the Kriya right away. Sholon, there's all different rough kinds of ways to sew them. Lalokta means actually to grab them together. So you kind of put the cloth together. V'lasotam k'min sulamos. Sulamos is like you can think of a ladder, so it's like one after the other. Shololon is simply a very rough stitch. Molam is also rough stitch. So all of these are very rough kinds of sewing, the kinds of sewing that an untrained person would sew together if there's a rip. Avalola achotam, but you can't actually bring them together. Achotam probably is from the same root as ach, right? Brought together like a brother, a twin together. And because, and once again, our society has become a throwaway society. When garments became worn out, they were recycled. And
like wicks or something.
Well, but more importantly, if you could recycle it in a way that you couldn't tell there was a hole there, right? You could do that as well. So lachota means to sew it in a way that this would be a permanent and the undetected or almost undetected kind of invisible mending. Correct, invisible mending. So, and Rav Chisda says on this, Ubi'ichri Alexandroi. Okay, this was a special type of invisible mending that was developed by the people from Alexandria.
You're saying especially, not.
In other words, not just any, not just any old Ichui, but this was really, Tosa says, the Yerushalmi says on top of the first line on Tosa Chavam Bet, Eze Ichui Kol She'en Makomo Nikar. And so apparently this is a type of specialty that was developed that you couldn't tell.
Like you said, invisible mending.
Right, correct.
It says that essentially the surface you couldn't tell, but on the inside was the thread.
Right. Okay. The truth is, pretty much all of our sewing is probably in that regard. Yeah, I'm saying. Even something like this. Where's the stitch? The stitch is on the inside.
Yeah.
So it's here. This is everybody's stitch.
That's a blind stitch. I know.
I think that's what it means, a blind stitch.
I thought it meant like when you in the old days when you get something invisible mended, you flip this.
They wove it together.
They wove it together, and you flipped it over, and on the inside you could see like threads hanging out where they put the threads in and they wove it.
Maybe.
I don't know.
What does Mr. Sansino say?
He says, neatly sewed together on the surface with the joint ends on the wrong side of the material, or darned invisibly.
Yeah, so you can only see on the inside, not on the outside.
Yeah, like so you see like the threads and everything on the inside.
Which, by the way, means that is actually fully sewn, fully repaired.
Yeah.
But the flip side of this is going to be, the Gemara is going to come to it a little bit later, that if you have to rip a garment again, another Kriya, it's not Yotze if you rip it apart from any of these previous rough stitches, but if you have the stitch that's sewn it up together completely, that it's invisible, this is you can re-rip this, and this is considered a new rip. Because
you shouldn't have done it in the first place, but if you did...
No, I'm saying, no, it's an additional Kriya for additional mourning.
No, I mean, you weren't supposed to do the invisible in the first place.
Okay.
Right?
Well, you sure you would.
Can you or can't you?
Yes, yeah.
So far he
After
said,
30 days for a parent.
right, the first statement
Right.
says
You can't.
you cannot do it.
So no, you
That's
can't
it.
do it right
So
away.
far.
But we'll see later down
Get to the
with other.
qualifications.
Right. Correct. Okay.
So far I'm not supposed to do it all together.
Okay. So all of this is about you've Kriya for a parent, for Shmos Ros, Refas Torah, Arei Yehuda, Beis Hamikdash. All of these, I guess I should include the parent here as well. All these can't be sewn up completely.
Right.
Right?
That's what it says.
On the other hand, if you had someone that's not a parent or not in this nature of these items, then you could sew it up completely after a while. Okay, so another relative that you're sitting shiva for. Okay, Tana Rabbana. Kriya mitoch hashalal, mitoch hamalal, actually this is what I told you before. If you do kriya from all the rough stitches, the shalal, the malal, the leket, mitoch hasulamot, lo yatsa, that's not considered kriya. That's just simply undoing what you did before. Mitoch icha yatsa. But if you had a garment that was sewn up because you had a kriya done for either it could have been done for a kriya, for a ritual kriya, or it could have been the garment was actually ripped. Does not have to be a ritual kriya for this to be the same halacha. In other words, let's say you ripped your pants. Okay, you ripped the garment, you ripped your toga. So if you sewed it up rough way and then you had to do kriya, you can't say, well, I already have the garment ripped, I'll rip it again. But if you already took the trouble to sew it up invisibly, that's already, you can do kriya on. So the Brisa says the inverse of really what we learned. Mitoch icha yatsa, if it's from a invisible mending, and then on Rav Chisda said on this, uvicha Alexandroi, that you can do kriya if it is icha. Which type of icha is this? The super
invisible.
Right, the super invisible mending together. Right, Rashi says it's like shalim. Okay, now. Having said that, the Gemara says something else. Tana Rabbanan, Rashay lahov cholamato uleachoso. So the Gemara says something else, that you can put the ripped garment or the rip in the garment on the bottom, and then you can actually sew it up in that form. In other words, the prohibition to sew up a garment is that it's going to be obvious the garment was resewn. You're saying that the rip itself is not a rip forever. But if you were to kind of put this rip on the bottom of the garment, where it's not seen anyway.
Well, does hafoch mean the bottom, or does it mean...
What means inside?
Inside out. I don't know. I'm not arguing. I'm just saying. You wonder...
Rashi says, Lamata shofecha.
That would make more sense, really.
Lamata shofecha kera lamata, vofech shalamata lamala.
Yeah, that makes more sense, because it's... completely.
So in other words, however you think of the garment, I'm trying to think how this could even be, because it's a toga, but it's a toga that has some kind of neck in it, neck hole.
Well,
so
this one that didn't, maybe.
Well, Rashi actually says that example. So in other words, if you turn the garment around, here's where Nebuch the kriya is normally done. So kriya is normally done over the heart.
Right.
But and here's your neck hole.
Right.
Okay. So if you manage to turn the garment upside down, and this became therefore not here, but becomes down on the bottom. Right. Think of a long toga that reaches down to your socks. Yeah. Correct? And then you turn it over and you manage to make a new neck hole on the bottom where there was nothing before. So when you close it up, you're not defeating the rip, because no one even sees there's a rip. Mm-hmm. That's the point. The point of it, you can't sew this up because symbolically the rip can't be ever compromised. However, if you've changed what the garment is, you've upended it, so to speak, it's not going to make a difference. So that's what the Brisa tells us. And okay, and then Rav Shimon Lazar Omer Aser La'achoso. So Rav Shimon Lazar argues and says that even if you turn it upside down, you still cannot sew up this garment with ichui. So the first opinion, Chachamim say you can, and Rav Shimon Lazar says not. And then there's an adjunct piece to this price. So Kshem Shamocher Asalachoso, Kacha Lokech Asalachoso. The same way that if I own it and I can't sew it up, any subsequent owner as well can't sew this up. This looks like it's Rav Shimon Lazar. And therefore, I have to have full disclosure when I sell the garment to say that this garment was ripped, has a ritual kriya in it that can never be repaired. It didn't just happen because I caught it on the side of the fence. right? Didn't get caught in the nail. It was done purposely. Ulefikach mocher tzarich lo dir lelokeach.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a
No wonder why.
halacha here that otherwise it would be mekach tos. Okay. Tosis has a question. What about if you sell to a guy?
Good question.
Right. What happens? All right. Okay.
What's the answer?
So
Should be okay.
so it should be okay, right? And Rashi and Tosis lechora hayamutar.
This is lo shamati.
He says, you're right.
Shamati
No, lo shamati mutar. And because Batosa says, but the whole reason is really that the lokeach shouldn't sew it up. But a guy's a guy. He's not bidden by our mitzvos. On the other hand,
Mutar, then a few lines later he says, yeah.
but then he seems to say, well, v'yotzarach iyon b'hai shem shemocher perish have perish latanakama blaficha. It says maybe when it says you can't, the mocher has to tell the person. That's according to the Tanakama. But maybe Rav Shimon Lazar argues on that as well. It's weird, it's not clear.
No.
Okay. Tan Rabbanan. Tchilas kara tefach. How long does a kriya have to be? So a kriya has to be a tefach. How long is a tefach?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
3.8 inches approximately. So v'tosefes shalosh etzbos. And if you have to do another kriya on top of the first kriya, right, then you do 3 etzbos. Now, 3 etzbos is not much shorter than a tefach.
It's short.
It's probably about an inch shorter. If you assume that this is, let's assume this is 4. So if I take off the top finger and the thumb, right, it becomes, let's say 3 or 2.8 or something. Div Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says if there's a kriya on top of a kriya, then it's only 3 etzbos. The original kriya is a tefach. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, nope, he moves down one step. Rabbi Yehuda Omer tchilas kriya shalosh etzbos, but tosefes kol. Rabbi Yehuda says no. The original kriya that I make for nothing for the first kriya is only 3 etzbos. When I have to add to that, it's a tiny rip. It's a kol shehu. So I've got basically a step down kind of machloka. It's either a tefach on the original kriya, and 3 etzbos in a secondary kriya, or 3 etzbos in the first kriya, and a kol shehu, a minimal amount in the secondary one. What's the halacha? So halacha gets split here. So the Gemara says like this: Amra Ula, halacha Rabbi Meir b'kriya, v'halacha Rabbi Yehuda b'tosefes. So Ula says no. The original kriya has to be a tefach. That's the halacha. However, if you're adding on to an original kriya, there's a secondary kriya that you're doing on top of the first one, so that's only has to be a kol shehu. That's only just a tosefes, right? So that's the halacha. So we split the halacha based upon Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Halacha Rabbi Meir b'kriya and Rabbi Yehuda b'tosefes. In fact, we have a brayso that says that, not just Ula who's namora, but the brayso says. Rabbi Yossi Omer tchilas kriya tefach but tosefes kol shehu. The sheet of Rabbi Yossi is split between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Says the kriya initially is a tefach and tosefes is a kol shehu. Okay, so now there's a funny kind of thing. You're doing one type of kriya on top of another type of kriya.
What's Rabbi Yossi? I'm sorry. What's Rabbi Yossi?
Rabbi Yossi.
Why is he adding anything here? Is he?
He is the middle shita.
We're saying that he's the middle sheet.
Ula says we paskin like Rabbi Meir that you need to for the initial kriya as a tefach, and we pass like Rabbi Yehuda the additional is just a kol shehu. Rabbi Yossi says exactly that.
He's agreeing with that.
He's agreeing. Well, he's not agreeing with Ula. He predates Ula.
Okay, but
you have two shittot, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi is the combo between both of them.
Okay. Right.
Okay.
And halacha is like Ula, right?
And halacha is like Ula, and halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Correct.
I'm saying,
always like Ula, right?
Guess so. Okay.
Ula and Yossi are saying the same thing, right?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Only Ula is giving us a psak halacha.
Right.
And Rabbi Yossi is giving us his opinion, which you see there's a middle opinion.
Happens to be the same.
Correct.
Right.
Tan Rabbanan. So here we have the following scenario: a kriya for a parent can't be sewn up.
Right.
That's the items we just said you can't be ma'ichle.
Yeah.
Apply to this whole list. The first one, which was for parents, then was about nasiya, basin, sefer Torah, etc., etc. So for parents, you can't sew it up. For other relatives, kriya can be sewn up. Okay. Question the Yesod up after Shloshim, after Shiva, that's a different discussion. What happens if you have a compound Kriya? So you have a Kriya on top of a Kriya,
Which we just talked about.
And now you want to kind of resuscitate this garment or recycle it a bit. So you can resew some of it, but you can't resew all of it. Okay? Or you can do for the parent you cannot resew, and for the let's say the sibling you could. So how much can you resew? How much can you not resew?
Right.
So
Does it depend if the first cut was for your parents? Or
it exactly depends if the first cut's for your parents or the first cut. So it can be a funny kind of thing. You think about a cut coming here. So the larger part you can't, the smaller part you can, or vice versa, depending on how the cycle is.
The first cut is the deepest.
Oh, you know. All right, Tarabana. Amrlo Meis Avi Vakar Vakara. They said your father died did Kriya. Meis Beno Vahosif, and he says your son died. Was an example of a non-parent. So he added right below it. First the rip goes down, and he added more. Tachto Misacher Elyon Ena Misacher. So the secondary Kriya, which is further down in the garment, makes sense.
And was for the son.
Can be sewn up.
Right.
The first one cannot. So that actually makes sense. If you think about doing Kriya off of a collar, for example, right? Yeah. So you rip it down 3 inches, 4 inches. You rip down another 2 inches. So the last 2 inches you can sew up.
It would look funny sewing up the top and leaving the whole.
But that's going to be the example now. Meis beno v'kara. The reverse case. They told him first the son died. He did Kriya. Meis aviv v'hosi v'lav. And then they told about his father, so he added to the Kriya. El yom misacha, tachton ena misacha. So then the upper part you can sew, the bottom part you can't. So you got a funny kind of thing. It's like basically you're sewing up this part of the garment, but the part that's below still has a hole.
In those societies, as soon as you saw that, you said, "Oh, you know, I mean."
In those societies, they've sewed up garments.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying the minute you saw it was sewn this way and sewn that way, you know right away. What the situation.
I'm telling you, we don't throw things away. I told you, my father, Olav Shalom, he always had this shirt he would pull out. Yeah. He did painting, all kinds of things, and there was a Kriya shirt that he saved.
Yeah.
Why? When you paint with a garment, you know it's going to get ruined, especially a shirt.
Yeah.
So that's what he pulled out. Yeah. Who would ever think of throwing it out?
Rabbi, aren't you supposed to do Kriya as soon as you heard?
Yes, he did.
As soon as you hear.
Right. So he did the first Kriya, then he tells them later on, a day later, or that the son died. He added to the Kriya. You don't have to rip another garment. He's got one rip, and unfortunately it was a double tragedy. But that's not that outlandish. In trauma incidents, right? Not everybody can be killed at the same time. People linger on. Person can die today, and the other person who's involved in the accident could die tomorrow. So these kind of things can happen, or 2 days later.
Sure.
So whatever is going, or it could be a random sequence of events.
But
A plague, could be a plague. Good example, plague.
I think his question was, you have to rent the garment right away as soon as you hear.
Right.
Okay? But we were discussing, you were giving the example of somebody who's wearing an old shirt.
No, my father had an old shirt that he had said Shiva for a brother or it was not for his parents because his parents died when he was very young. Okay, he came from a large family. My father came from a large family. He was the child of a second marriage, second wife, and there was altogether 11 children. Okay, this was a very large mishpacha. He was the baby. So as he moved through life,
sure, others would
pass away. So I don't remember which aunt this was from or uncle. This was actually aunt. It was had only one brother, but I remember that he had this old shirt, and it was clear that he had a kriya on it. And when we would paint, we would paint ourselves. My mother would buy the paint and say paint. Yeah. And after it was finished, my mother would say, at least it's clean. You paint. So he would have this, or whatever it was, whether it was dirty kind of work, he would pull this out. So I'm saying, it was a shirt he didn't throw away. I know when I got up from Shiva, for my father, my father and mother, I threw the shirt away.
Yeah.
Right?
And used for painting.
I didn't use it for painting.
We're covered, you know.
You know what? I didn't want to schlep it back in the suitcase.
No, but can you take the shirt if you're not wearing the shirt?
Can you take it?
He's got a shirt that he wants to put on. Can he take off another shirt, put that one on?
So if it's for a parent, you have to rip kriya on every garment you wear. Because if you change shirts during Shiva for a parent, you have to kriya again.
No, what I'm saying, let's say he's wearing a good shirt.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
His shirt over there. Can he change shirts and then do the kriya?
Yeah, yes. So we do kriya at the cemetery. We do kriya at the chapel.
At the chapel.
We don't do kriya right away.
Oh, you don't do
No, we don't.
Right.
Today.
So then there's no mitzvah to wear your best shirt.
I see. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And not only that, but since you have to do kriya, you might as well leave that shirt on. So unfortunately, we dispose of it after a while.
Yeah, but the
Right.
fact that you do it at the chapel already means it's different than it was in those days, right?
Right.
The instant agony.
Correct. It's likely that in those days they did it right away. Hey, this parsha coming up, we have Shlach Lecha.
Right.
Right. V'Yoshua b'Nun v'Kalev ben Yefuna karu b'gdehem.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
They right away they hear what's going on. The people say we're not going to Eretz Yisrael.
Really, it's more symbolic.
And not only that, it meant something like a beged
Exactly.
really was an important
Exactly.
possession. Whereas today, we
It's
live in a throwaway society.
It's symbolic.
And remember, the kriya was not just done for death. Kriya was done for all kinds of bad news.
Right.
Right. It's a story in Malachim. Where with Yehoram, when it's right before the Haftorah of the Arba Mitzorayim, the 4 lepers.
Yeah.
It's the first half of the story, where Aram has surrounded the city in Shomron, and I think it's King Yehoram, and there's a terrible famine going on, and there's no food, and the king is walking along, and there's a woman calls up and says, "My Adoni Amelech, help me." He says, "Help you? What do you want me to help you? There's no food to give to you." She says, "No, I have something else." She says, "Yesterday, my friend and I, my shachas and I, made a deal, and we said that last night we would boil my son and eat it, and tonight we'd boil her son and eat it. Well, we boiled my son last night, and we ate him, and tonight she hit her son. You got to do something, king, about it." Right? And the king hears this, and he rips kriya. And people, the pasuk says, people see him walking on the wall with kriya and sackcloth. Okay? And then, of course, and then he's very antagonistic to Elisha, who was prophesied this famine. Right? And then the next Haftorah, and then the next parak is Haftorah of the Arba Mitzorayim, the 4 lepers who stumble upon the camp of Aram.
Yeah.
They said, "Let's go to Aram because we're starving. We can't go into the city because they won't let us in." And they find they're gone.
Right.
And then, of course, they take food from themselves. They take some jewelry and some gold, and then they go tell the king and tell the people. Okay, that's Haftorah. Anyways, so any type of bad news, people did kriya, and they did it right away. It was a immediate response. We don't. So A, we're more careful about garments. B, we live in a more staid, restrained society.
Absolutely.
People don't like to show emotions. People don't like to show feelings. They do, but I'm saying people like to keep on inside rather than show it on the outside. And that's even Nebuch in Avelus. You don't know what people are feeling when you go to a shiva sometimes. So at any rate, where are we up to? Right, so these were the examples. One more example. Elya Masach Tachton and Masach, right? Meis Aviv, Meis Imo, Meis Achiv, Meis Achoso. You have all these deaths one after the other. Father, mother, brother, sister. Korea Kara Echad Kulam. Notice before he can do Kriya, he hears another person died, another person. So in such a case, you do one kriya for everybody. You don't have to do multiple kriyas. The kriyas are for every time you got bad news or every time you hear about a person passing away. If you get multiple together, so it's one kriya. Who says it? Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir Omer, Al kulam kera echad, alav ivalim o kera echad. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir says, no, yes, it's true, but there's 2 types of kriya. There's 2 levels. One is parents, one is for non-parents. So therefore you have to do 2 kriyas. One kriya is for parents, one kriya is for the non-parents. So he says that Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseir has another sheet which seems to argue upon the whole brisa that for your parent you have to make a separate kriya, which would seem to reject everything we did until now about the brisa, that you heard about a father and you heard about a child, right? So that there's separate types of kriyas, right? Why? My timus, I'm Rav Nachman Yitzchak Lefi she'ena b'tosefes. Because with the kriya of a father, kriya of a parent, there's not something that you can add to. No, it's a standalone type of sadness. That means a different type of mourning. It goes on for a year. It's a much deeper sadness. It's a break in tradition, right? There's Chazal view the death of a parent very different than the death of any other relative, no matter how close you feel to them. So therefore, when it comes to kriya for a parent, that has to be a standalone kriya, and therefore, for two parents, it can be one standalone kriya. But it's got to be a separate kriya from all the other kriyas. And Amar Shmuel, halacha krav Yehuda ben Meseira. Shmuel comes along and says halacha krav Yehuda ben Meseira, which means that if you heard about the death of a parent and you heard about the death of a sibling at one time, you have to how many kriyas? 2 kriyas, right? So the Gemara says, okay, that that makes sense. We have one question. Mi Amar Shmuel hachi? Could Shmuel have said halacha is like Rav Yehuda ben Meseira? Amar Shmuel halacha gedivrei mekel be'evel. We have a rule. Shmuel himself says the rule. And the rule works all the way through Avelis, that any time there's a machlokas, which opinion do we take for Avelis? Halacha gedivrei mekel be'evel. So how can Shmuel be the one to say that in this machlokas in the brisa, whether it's one kriya for everybody, or parent and non-parent, or one kriya for parent, or one kriya for parent separately, or one kriya for the non-parent separately, that seems to be more machmir. Now you're going to say, well, how much more machmir is? The garment is ruined. The answer is the garment was not ruined. You see, garments were reused. And surely to have to make another kriya seems like an additional kind of stringency that the Tanna Kama doesn't hold with. So Shmuel himself, the one who said, "Allah can never make a be'evel." So Gemara says, "Avelos lechud, kriya lechud." Oh, you're right, but there's a rule for avelos, and a rule for kriya. Kriya is a separate category. And in fact, that makes sense because you saw we had a whole sequence of events that you do kriya that had nothing to do with Avelos. It has to do with bad news. The example I gave about the king in Shomron, Yehoram, he does kriya not because the kid died, not because they boiled the kid, not the kriya, it's because how horrendously they have dropped that the women would make this deal. We'll eat one child one night, the other child the other night, and it just goes against the grain of survival. So therefore, halacha avelos lechud or kriya lechud. Okay. So now, therefore, what do we have so far? That when it comes for hearing multiple people at the same time, one kriya will suffice, except if there's a sequence that includes parents and non-parents. Right. Okay. If you hear kriya, if you hear a separate news of you do kriya for. So the assumption is you did kriya, and then you do a tosefes, and tosefes and a tosefes. Okay?
And the tosefes may be of any amount.
Correct.
Minimal even.
Correct. Now, the question the Gemara is going to ask is the one that we all should be asking: how far does this go? How far can you do kriya? When does a garment stop becoming a garment and become two? Okay. If you can keep doing kriya, right? Where's the end? Is the end when you reach the bottom or not? So the Gemara says no. It's not when you reach the bottom.
Are they both parents as one kriya?
Well, if you hear them together, it's one kriya. Right?
I assume this question is generated because they would rewear garments.
Yeah. Because yes.
Yeah.
Because they would rewear garments, and because garments were ripped. And because the Gemara is giving examples where you're hearing multiple news one after the other. I think Mr. Bendel said it could have been plague, right? Yeah. So plague, there were multiple people dying, and they died continuously over the course of the plague. Some of these things occur.
Lots of plagues.
Right, lots of plagues. As people move into cities, there's more because disease travels. And the ancient world, they had no way to stop these things either. So Hechon Korea, how far can you do the rip? More importantly, you talk about doing the rip on neck opposite the heart, correct? So how far down can you stretch the heart? Like you can add, but at one point it stops being the heart, it becomes mother pipic, and that's exactly what the Gemara says. Okay, so the Gemara says, ad hechon korea ad tiburo, until your belly button. That's the first opinion. V'yesh omrim ad libo. And the other opinion is until your heart, which really is much shorter.
Absolutely.
Right? Much shorter means
From your neck to your heart.
From your neck to your heart. So wherever, however you want to stretch that down, it's pretty much here where your that breast pocket is. So an apple pishain rai ledavar, even though there's really no proof for it, but zech ledavar. There is, however, a malitza in Yoel, you know it, where shenemar v'kira levavchem v'yal b'gdeichem. So where Yoel says, Yoel's talking about Shuvah, this is from, we include this in Parshas, in Shabbos Shuvah and Haftorah, rip your hearts and don't rip your garments. Yoel is talking about, of course, being sincere in the change that you make. In other words, it's easy to rip your garments and say, I'm repentant, I'm changed, I'm humble, but inside is really where the real marker is. So therefore, this is the machlokes. And now the Gemara, now the Mishnah, so the Brisa continues. The Brisa looks like a Brisa, and the Brisa goes back and talks about Tiburo. So it tries to say what happens when you reach Tiburo, which the implication you're getting from this is that the halacha is that you can actually rip down to the belly button, to the navel. So that is, by the way, the halacha. Higel Tiburo, marchik shol shetzvos v'korea. So once you reach down there, so then you have to start again. Doesn't mean the garment is out. You can have multiple kriyas on the same garment, but you got to start somewhere else. So how far over do you have to start? Shalosh Shespos, 3 fingers over
To the side.
and to the side, and then start again. Okay. Once again, in a society where garments were primitive and the garments were simple and garments were reused, it makes sense. Nismali milafanav. What happens if you've actually filled up the whole front? This garment has been used and used and used and used again.
It was a plague.
Now, the Gemara always gives these scenarios. I want to see how far you actually go.
Yeah,
correct?
sure.
Okay. So, and by the way, if you think about it, today we do kriya on a shirt. If you had to redo the shirt multiple times, how many times could you use that? How many times could you use that shirt actually? I don't know. 6 times? 5 times maybe?
Again, like you said, in our society, you wouldn't think of it.
I'm saying, but practically speaking, I mean, once again, the kriya that we're doing, is usually like a 6-inch kriya. So it's already coming down to tiburo to some extent. So then you're going to move over 3 inches, not that much. So if you think, so even if we were to reuse it, you're not going to get that much out of it.
There's no consideration for sneers here.
Yes.
What about women? Yeah,
For women they do.
Yeah, for women they turn it around right away.
Whoa.
Correct.
Good point.
Yeah. So for women, the kriya is done today, and they either pin it up. They bring safety pins, or sometimes they would actually, if it's simply a blouse, they would turn the blouse around or have a blouse underneath or something, depending.
Rabbi, don't they do kriya?
With a sota, they do kriya. They also bare her head. They take.
Oh, the sota.
Yeah. Interesting. In no cases of sota ever mentioned in Tanakh. I guess it's not that interesting. You don't really tell us what they ate for breakfast either, right?
I don't know how many cases there were.
How many incidents were there? I have no reason to suspect that there were no incidents of sota.
No.
Could have been like I don't know. Could have been every other week. Who knows?
No. A guy would have to think a long time before he put his wife through this kind of thing, whether what she was doing or not.
A lot of crazies in the world.
What?
A lot of crazies in the world.
So I don't know if he has a thing that. I mean, there are cases where these things come up.
I didn't say they couldn't come up. You had to warn her. You had to tell her in advance, don't go, don't do this, right? And then you have to live with her afterwards, right? When she knew that. And she remember, she was innocent, right? We're assuming, let's say
she was innocent.
Right? So here's a guy who put her through all this.
He's lived with her,
right? Oh yeah, he's going to have some life after that.
I don't know. These things unfortunately happen.
Are you kidding?
They just threw a rabbi out of the RCA.
I didn't say it couldn't happen.
Threw a rabbi out of the RCA. He's been married 5 times.
Yeah. No.
But wife number 5, he had an affair with while he was married to wife number 4. Okay. And she was also married. I mean, it happens. These things happen.
This is a new thing?
This happened last week.
I want to be clear. I wasn't trying to say there were no.
So I'm saying there's cheating.
I said how many sota things there were. Women cheating? A separate issue.
Well, the woman he was with, she was cheating and he was cheating. So there, it happens.
Absolutely, that happens.
Bottom line is, we're off topic. Okay. So if you kind of run out of space, if you fill up the entire front of the garment, there's no more place for kriya. So then you kind of turn the garment around. You can this is reversible. I know it's hard for us to imagine. That you have multiple kriyas, but this could be done. Especially in a society where garments were simpler and garments were more expensive.
Right.
This would actually smoke out the shatnez, all the holes.
No, there's no question. The Torah says if you took as security a guy's garment,
You take it back.
so imagine you considered that security.
Right.
So I mean, we're talking here, but
You didn't have much of anything. You didn't
have
have
nothing.
That's
Have
right.
nothing.
Okay, let's come because we have to come to a Kohen and to the woman. Okay, so nismali milamala. Once again, you've covered everything on the top and end of the garment. You've done the front, now you turn the front to the back. You've done the back, which is now the front. So hovchola milamata. So you turn that upside down, and then you do the bottom. Now becomes the top. But the key is when you do kriya. The kriya has to be done in a vertical position from top to bottom. However, you've recycled or redirected or reused or rebroken in this garment, right? It has to go vertical, and therefore the Gemara says, if therefore you rip from the bottom up or you rip sideways, that's not yotze the mitzvah of kriya. Kriya is a rip down. It makes sense. Using the force of gravity, it's probably easier for your hand to rip.
But you wonder why they make halacha. Like, I mean, just logically, there's nothing wrong. Obviously, it's halacha, but a cut's a cut. It tears.
By the way, what's interesting is they don't say about putting the garment sideways. Obviously, it looks like garments could be flipped up and down, up to top to bottom, bottom to top. But it looks like sideways didn't flip so
There were
easily.
tunics.
Okay, whatever. Okay, I don't know. Now, so therefore, korem milamatam and asad milyatza. Ella shekohen gadol porem milamata. But a kohen gadol turns his garment, rips from the bottom, and does kriya. Now, what it means is not that that's suddenly a permissible for the kohen gadol. A kohen gadol does not do kriya.
Why?
It's probably in kohen gadol.
Oh, he couldn't attend the funeral and all this.
So he also doesn't do kriya.
So what does pares milmata mean?
You turn it up. So he does kriya from the bottom up, but notice with the point of it being, it looks like this is almost like they recognize he wants to do kriya, but he can't do kriya. So do kriya that's not kriya.
Yeah.
So
therefore he turns it upside down and does the kriya from the very bottom of the garment. So as if to say he's not doing kriya, but he is doing kriya. Okay.
And the beged is his special beged, right? The Kohen's special beged, right?
Oh, no, he buys a cheap
Let's say BAYT or whatever it is.
Take a cheap one.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's a special garment.
Big day kahuna?
I think so.
You
Must
think?
be. No, I don't know.
I
He
don't
only
think.
wear the big day kahuna when he's doing the avodah.
Well, not clear.
We just agreed people could go and get a less expensive garment.
Not clear.
Not
Some
clear.
of them
It says right away, pliguba.
We're like, right?
Disagreement right there.
They wore
Pliguba.
like all day, every day, the big day kahuna.
Maybe during their mishmeret they did that.
Did the Kohen Gadol do the avodah every day?
Yeah, but there's
What
a.
about Organ Kahanim? Did he do? I don't know if he did.
So,
every day.
what does it say about the Kohen Gadol? There was a prohibition for the Kohen Gadol to do kriya.
Yeah, I thought he couldn't do.
No.
He couldn't follow the funeral. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do that. But,
Shouldn't be the
well, he couldn't be a Katame for sure. Even for his parents, right? But I'm not sure he.
Right?
No, for the Kohen, for the parents, sure.
The Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol could be a Tame for him.
The
Kohen Gadol for his
Kohen
parents.
Gadol could be the tummy for
his parents?
For his parents?
Here we
I
go.
think so.
V'hakohen, black and white guys.
No.
Parsha Zemor. V'hakohen hagadol me'achav. By the way, it's never called Kohen Gadol in the Torah. It's called a Kohen hagadol me'achav.
Yachav, okay.
Asher yitzak rosho shemen ha'mishkal milei yado laboshes ha'bgadim es rosho lo yifra uvgadav lo yifrom. Okay.
Period.
And then it says v'akol nafshos meis lo yavo laviv limod lo yitama. Okay. Umin ha'mikdash lo yitzei
Lo
kelit
yitzei.
beis mikdash lechel
Well, you can't follow the funeral thing either.
Right,
That's
okay.
it. You can't go into
But the bottom line is you can't do kriya. Okay,
Now a regular Kohen
Could.
Yes,
Yes.
it's only Kohen Gadol.
Okay.
All right, and may even be only Kohen Gadol as Shemin HaMishcha. Right? I don't know.
He said Shiva, Kohen
No, I don't think so.
Gadol. No, he didn't.
I don't believe so. That's, you know what? That goes with the job. So that's about a Kohen Gadol, I should say. Now the Gemara says, "Plikabo Rav Masna Mar Ukva, Utravayu Mishmei Diavur the Shmuel, V'Levi." There's a machlokes. I haven't told you what the machlokes in Rav Masna
so far.
Mar Ukva.
This is how
They're
who the
both
parties
they're
are.
both saying both opinions are being said there of Avur the Shmuel and Levi. Okay, so it's telling you, by the way, it goes back to the beginning and time of the Amoraim. Levi and Avur the Shmuel is the early Amoraim, or at least what the tradition goes back that far. Charamar Kol Shiva Korea Liachar Shiva Mosif. If you have multiple kriyas to do, the examples we gave before, so not exactly like we thought before. During Shiva, you have to do. During Shiva, if you hear about it, let's see now.
Maybe if you hear about two during the first Shiva, you have to do a real Kriya, a second Kriya maybe, and after
If
Shiva.
the second relative's death
If
is
it's
reported anytime
during the Shiva,
Right, during
you
the Shiva,
hear
that's
it.
what I said.
You hear about the relative passing away, and it's during the Shiva of that relative, not during your Shiva.
No, during.
Not that you have Shiva for a first person.
Oh.
It's during the period of time that the news reaches you from the death of the relative. We'll be very careful.
You say that
In other
again?
words, you get the news about the relative dying, right? And it's still within the period of Shiva for that relative.
You're sitting
then
Shiva,
what?
yeah.
You hear
Then-
then you hear a second relative.
Let's stay with the first
we're
one.
talking about the second relative.
Let's stay with the first one. You are sitting Shiva or you're not at that point
You are.
for that relative.
You just got the news.
So you just got the news, but it's the kind of relative you have to sit Shiva for, yes?
Right.
No.
Correct. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you just
And
got
you
the
weren't
news.
already sitting Shiva.
You were not already sitting Shiva? You were.
Yes.
No.
You are. Let's make sure we get this right.
Yeah, so let's go slowly. Very slowly.
Kol Shiva Meis Lo Meis.
Im Shama Shmuat Lo Meit Achar Shemet Lo Meit.
When he's sitting Shiva.
Acher. He just says. He just says Kol Sheva Le'evlo. So that's have to go further back then, right?
So maybe he's sitting Shiva. Let's see now.
Chad Amar. Echad Mehem Amar. Kol Shiva. He says La'avlo. Im Shama. So it sounds like he's an Avel. Im Shama Shemet Lo Met Acher.
Okay.
It
so
sounds like.
his Avelis. Okay.
Sounds like.
Good. Let's work with that. His Avelis. So Kol Shiva, if he hears about this the second relative dying during his Shiva,
Right.
Korea, he does a full Kriya, L'achar Shiva Mosif. On the other hand, if he has finished his Shiva,
Right.
for the first relative,
Right.
and then he hears about the second relative passing away, he takes the original Kriya and adds to it.
Adds to
Yeah,
it,
that makes
right.
sense,
Yeah.
okay? In other words, while you're sitting Shiva for the first person, it makes sense. That's an independence mourning.
Mhm.
So now you hear news, you want to do another independent mourning. But once you've finished it, I guess you've got past it, you can go back to the first Kriya and simply add to it. V'chadamar, kol shloshim korea, liachar shloshim mosif. Okay? So, and the second opinion is that, no, the difference is within shloshim.
Mhm.
If you hear the second decedent during shloshim, you do a full kriya. After shloshim, from the first relative, you then can be mosiv and add to the rib. Okay? Now, so the Gemara says, Maskiv L'Rav Zera. Man the Omar Kol Shiva Korea. Amai, what's the reason, logical reason? The lo nitan l'sholo. The reason that I do another kriya for hearing it during the period of while I'm sitting Shiva for the first relative is I can't even sew up. I can't even baste the first kriya during the period of Shiva.
Right.
So therefore, if I can't baste it,
How am I going to show?
how am I going to now add to it?
Right.
So that appears to be his reason. So if that's the case, the Gemara has a question. Elahad di Amar Hoisha Shololos on the altar. So Hachanami. So, but we know that for a woman she can sew it up right away. So you see that it doesn't always work that way. Now the whole reason, the logical reason why a person can't add to the Kriya during Shiva is because you can't even sew it up at all. But you see that there are exceptions to the rule the woman can sew it up. And the Gemara's answer is that exception is because, not because about a Shiva issue, a Kriya issue, the issue is about Kavod Isha. So with the woman, this is what we do. We actually, that's why they use the pins, because when the woman does Kriya right there at the chapel, they're at least basting it together. You can't really baste it, so they use what do you call it, safety pins. So the Gemara, so that's the Gemara. The altar. You see that you can do something to the Kriya during Shiva for a woman. So the Gemara says, no, Hasam Isham Kvod Ishahu. Okay, that's Kvod Isha. That's a different kind of category. It's not about working on the actual Kera rip. Therefore, what we have so far is the person who says during Shiva you must do a new rip because you can't monkey with the rip during Shiva. You can't baste it,
right,
and therefore you can't even add to it. It's a separate, wholly separate Kriya that has to remain as it is. The same way you can't baste it, you can't denigrate it by adding a secondary Kriya to it as well. Okay. Man the Amar Kol Shloshim Korea Amai. So when a person says you can't do Kriya, you can't add to the Kriya for 30 days, what's the reason? The Lo Nitan Lachoso. So the reason must be for 30 days you can baste it in the thin shloshim, but you can't sew it up completely. The rule for a mourner, for mourning for a person other than the relative, other than a parent, is after shloshim you can actually invisibly mend it. Until shloshim you can't. You can shololo and mololo. So that must be the reason for that. Why on 30 days that on 30 days you can't add to a secondary kriya, because you see you could sew it up sort of, but you really can't sew it up completely. So you see this, the grip has to stay as it is. If you can't sew it up completely, you can't add to the kriya. So the Gemara says the question is, if that's the case, but what about the case of a parent that you can never sew it up? So if that's the case, maybe you should never be able to do an tosefes to the kriya forever, because you see the rule itself is not set. The rule has an exception. The exception is for parents. You can never sew it up malachoso. So why then would this person say that after shloshim you can add to the kriya? And the answer is because the reason that we don't sew up a parent's kriya ever is a separate reason. It's hasam. So hasam mishum kvod ava v'imahu. That's a separate secondary rule about kibbud avaim. So in fact, the whole rule about the avelus of a year for a parent, it's a very different kind of avelus. It's an avelus that becomes tied into kibbud av or kibbud aim. Right. So it's hard for us to imagine how you are respecting your parents by not listening to music, not going. But you're saying I'm trying to remember who they are and keep them in my mind. So consequently, the exception for the parents is not about the importance of the kriya, about the kera, the rip itself. The reason for the exception of the parents is like kibbud avaim. But everybody else, you can't sew it up completely until after 30 days, which means for 30 days you can't even add a secondary kriya to that. So that's a machlokas between the two of them. Okay, good. Tan Rabbanan. Hayotze bebeged karua lifnei hameis. If you have a ripped garment already, okay, this is called pravin tzitkas. You have a garment that's already ripped, and you go out in front of the funeral procession, you put on your ripped garment and join the funeral procession. What do you want people to think? That you ripped kriya for this guy.
Of course.
Right? But you didn't. You happened to have a ripped garment. So hareza gozil asamesim vesachayim. Okay, so you're stealing. This is gnevas das. You're stealing from the dead. because you look like you're trying to impress the people about the dead, and you're obviously creating misimpression of the people that are alive as well.
You can't just rip it a little more where it's ripped, or you gotta rip.
So sure you can. So rip. So gesundheit, rip.
No, but when you rip a little more, does that count?
In other words, let's
say you rip so much.
Yeah, fine.
You have another inch.
Then you're showing you're ripping. But he's saying if you happen to have a ripped garment and you go up and beged karua, so then you're meramis abrios. You're showing people as if to say that you kriya for this person. This person was so important to you. Okay. Now who are you going to rip kriya for? I don't know. So we had a halacha before about ripping kriya for a Rebbe.
Absolutely.
Well, but let's say you're a real Amoritz. You don't have a Rebbe. You don't want people to know that. So you have a ripped garment that you ripped while you were, I don't know, cutting wood or something. Well, got ripped on the fence. You wear that garment to the lawyer that everybody should think that you ripped kriya because this guy was so important to you. That was important to you in your life. But if everybody else is crying, you should cry too, because it doesn't look good that you whatever it is. So that's just simply a halacha that gets thrown in here. Another halacha. Remember I told you the example of going to the hotel, and I said the only possible heter, which is not even really heter, is that if you borrow someone else's shirt, right, and you buy the shirt from the guy, okay, and so forth. So you'll see from this Gemara it works and it doesn't really work. It would work. First, it's got to be real kinyan. Okay, maybe a quarter or maybe a shekel is not real kinyan for a garment. Second of all, it's like selling the chometz. I don't know. Okay. The other part is the person is not aware that you're going to the kotel. In other words, if I say, lend me your garment, or I'm going to wear your garment going to the kotel, you assume that I'm going to do kriya on it.
Right.
The only heter could possibly be is I say, lend me your garment, because I'm going to the marketplace. You expect my lady to borrow the garment and bring you back the whole garment.
Right.
But I go to the kotel and stay, then I don't have permission to rip your garment, because you only gave it to me to borrow and to return. But if you were to say to me, I'll say it again, if I say to you, lend me your garment, I'm going to the kotel, right? You would say no, because I don't want you to rip my garment. But the moment you say yes, the assumption is I'm going to treat it as if I go to the kotel. So the example, right? So the example that I gave you that would have to work would have to be such a case where it's a real shmeidrei that you didn't say what you learned.
Again?
The shmeidrei is people who are concerned about doing kriya when they go to the kotel.
Right.
They sell their shirt to their friend.
They sell the shirt that they're wearing to their friend.
Right.
So when they go, they can't tear it.
Yeah, give me a loony, and you bought my shirt. It's your shirt, and therefore I have to take care of your shirt.
Gotcha.
That's the deal. Okay. That's the closest I can come to a heter.
But you're going to say you asked the guy to wear the shirt, and then you rip kriya on his shirt. The other guy's shirt.
No, this is my shirt that I sell to you, and then I go to the kotel. I can't cut it. I can't.
Yeah, no, but I mean,
and if I
it belongs to you. Sorry, what I'm
so I sold it. My shirt I sold to him, but I'm still wearing it. I'm still wearing my shirt.
Let's do the Gemara. Let's do the Gemara. The Gemara gives a case not about people trying to get out doing kriya at the kotel. The Gemara gives a case where a person borrows a garment and he becomes an avel. Okay. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, Ha'omer lechaver hashileni chalukcha, ve'elech vavaker's alba. He says, let me borrow your garment. I'm going to visit my father. What do you do? Shehu choleh. Okay. So, but I want to appear to him in a nice garment. You have a nice, a designer set of garments and designer toga, and I want to look coveted for my father. So, and he's sick, and I want to go there. And I get there, and they say, he just died. So korea humaacha, you rip. And then you actually can seamlessly sew it up, which you normally can't do, but this is not your garment. So you give him back the garment, and you pay him for the loss of the rip.
Value.
Correct. It's diminished to an extent. You actually seamlessly sewed it up, but it's still diminished. It's not the same. But if the other hand, if I didn't tell you that I'm taking it to see my father who's sick, so you had absolutely no idea that this could possibly occur, hareza lo yigabo, then I can't even rip it at all. The moment that I say to you, I'm going to see my father who's sick, you should be aware that there may be a hazard in lending me your shirt, that if I get there and he's sick, he's dead. Because being sick in those days didn't mean that you had a cold. Everybody had a cold. Okay. So,
in the next town.
So I said that's the example I tried to say, or the extension I tried to say. People going to the kotel.
Right.
I say, okay, here, buy my shirt for a loonie, okay? But it only is going to work if the assumption is that I didn't tell you, had no idea I'm going to the kotel. If you had an idea I'm going to the kotel, my responsibility would be to kind of do kriya, sew it up, right? And then nonetheless.
So you say to the guy, buy my shirt, and I go, say a bracha for me at the kotel. You know what I mean? It's like the first time you might not know, but the second time you're going to know.
Okay. All right, Tan Rabbanan. Chol shemeis lo meis. If a person is sick, and sick means very seriously ill, like we just saw the chola that died, a person is very seriously ill, and they tell him that a relative died. Ein modin oso shemeis. You don't have to tell him, and you don't tell him that the relative died. It's actually not required to tell him, and in fact, in this case, Shema Titarev Olav. Shema Titarev died to Olav. Maybe he will become depressed, sad, crazy, right? He'll be out of control, and it'll impact upon his sickness. Correct?
He's going to find out one day, right?
Possibly, or maybe not. Maybe not. This is not the internet where everybody is. What you say today is around the world tomorrow. And even when he finds out, maybe he'll be better. Either he'll be better or he won't be here.
Right.
Okay. In other words, it's a chola. So if he recovers, he may be in a better mood. Third thing, even if he does hear about it, it may be after 30 days, so it's a shmul rachoka. He doesn't have to sit a full shiva. Fourth of all, when you hear that a person passed away months earlier, the emotions become less, because while it may be new news for you, for everybody else you recognize it's old news. So everybody else has gotten used to it. So there are a lot of reasons that say even deferring it may be important, even if eventually the news will get out. But the simple pshat is he may not find out about it. Not only that, so you don't tell him, and make sure you don't let it slip out. You don't walk around with kriya in front of him. People who appear to him, who are taking care of the chola, should not, and they're mourners, because you can just imagine the sick person is being attended to by members of the family who know about the other deceased. So you don't wear kriya in front of him. And you make
the women,
right, very gender based. Okay, make sure the women are not there crying in front of him, because once again, women were very, very, very emotional. The end of the Masechta talks, by the way, about different types of konanos and crying that goes on at the funerals, which women were specialists. Okay, we talked about the eulogizer being specialized, but the actual emotions and the wailing that goes on.
They hired people.
Yeah, but the women, correct?
Professional criers.
Professional criers, but the professional eulogizers, right? Who are professional poets and criers, but the women didn't have to be professionals. They always cried.
Today we have professional lobbyists.
Okay. So the court. I'm sorry. Mishaskas Nashim in front of. Period. Umekarin lekatam of agmas nefesh. Now, for a katan who's under bar mitzvah, he actually does not have to do kriya. It's not chayv in mitzvos, right? So you're going to say, oh yeah, but there's chinuch. This is even more than chinuch. That this is a way for him to emote his feelings of sadness. So you're encouraged to have the katan do kriya, or you have the katan do kriya. It's a different halacha than simply chinuch. Chinuch, there's really no emotional value for a katan to fast on Yom Kippur. It's nice, they feel good, they feel important, they're practicing, but this is about agmas nefesh. V'koren, next halacha, v'koren al-chavi v'al-chamoso, and you rip for your father-in-law and mother-in-law, mipnei kvod ishto. Okay, so this is something we're not knowing today, that the spouse would do kriya as well for the death of the spouse's parent. Okay, and we saw the halacha once upon a time. V'yom Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says another halacha. These are all separate halachas. Tana ba'ava Rabasi. We learned in Ava Rabasi. Ava Rabasi is apparently a medrash that, and there was probably different medrashim. So this means the big Avel. So the power is Ava Rabasi and Ava Zutrasa. Those, if they're two medrashim, they're the same name. There's a larger collection. Rabasi is harbe, right? And zutz are small. Zutz are small. Okay. So we learned in this brises of Avel Rabasi, Avel lo yanech tinok besoch cheko mibnei shemevil lidei schok. So there's a halacha that many people don't know. That an avel should not put a little child on his lap. There's a halacha that many people don't know.
I know.
Right? In fact,
it's in the Lamb book. I remember.
Yeah.
Because it's to levity. You lose.
That's it.
And I remember someone brought a little child. My father passed away, and I didn't. And I realized afterwards, it's true.
And everybody says, well, you know what, you want to make him feel better, you want to take his mind off the shiva, the sadness, you see continuity, and that's true. There's all kinds of reasons, but at the same time, there's one primary feeling during Avelis, during shiva, and that is, of course, sadness. So, Shemavila de Schok, V'nimtza Mizgana Alabrios, and you're actually going to embarrass him, really, from all the people. You're putting him down. People are going to say, here's the guy, he's an Avel, but look how happy he is. So there's a theme that the Avel is, of course, supposed to remain sad, and not engage in these kinds of happiness.